Scoop Nation. We're listening to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, November 2nd. I'm your host, Ryan McClincy, and on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Bill Greene as we discuss some of the CFP rankings. Now, we are recording this episode on Tuesday night before the rankings are actually released, so we are going to be giving our thoughts on what the committee is actually going to do on the ranking show, how we see it playing out, and some of the outside chances to watch for through November, as there are some teams on the outside that could potentially work their way back in. We'll also talk about some additional takeaways from the Penn State game this past weekend, including the continued success of Larry Johnson and how the defensive line performance has improved from year over year and has improved as the games have progressed this year as well, and how that impacts the recruiting trail with big booms this week, as well as some hopefully potential bigger booms later on this year. We'll also take a look ahead at Northwestern and what we can expect this weekend from the Ohio State Buckeyes as they head to Evanston to play the Wildcats. Now, before we get started, just make sure you like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on all the latest content from the entire team here at BuckeyeScoop.com. And with that, let's get on to the show. All right, Bill, welcome to the show. Always good to have you back. How you doing?
I'm doing great today, man. How are you doing?
I am good, man. I am good. Taking this week one day at a time, just waiting through to Saturday and another chance to watch our guys.
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, the season goes so fast. There's such a buildup to it. It seems like we start with the spring game, gets everybody fired up, and then you're done.
Yeah.
But you talk about it. There's the June camps, there's recruiting, and oh my gosh, fall camp in August is coming. The buildup is unbelievable. And then you look up and it's like, it's been 8 weeks already.
November.
They played 8 games. It's like, oh my gosh, the Michigan game is like right around the corner. So enjoy every week. That's what I try to tell people. And I know you want to look ahead. We love looking ahead, but man, you only get 12 of these.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you're guaranteed are 12. So enjoy them, and what's coming down the road, it'll come.
Yeah.
But just enjoy each week. That's what I try to do myself. Man, just enjoy each week, savor each week, because you get 12 of them, and they go so fast. So, but Ohio State's sitting really pretty right now. I like where they sit right now.
I mentioned it in the intro here, but as we're recording this on Tuesday, the rankings haven't yet come out there. They're coming out here in the next 2 hours. And so kind of as we look at the CFP show and the rankings and what we expect to happen, but also what we expect can happen, right? In the coming weeks in November and into December, you look at a lot of those teams. Georgia played Missouri close. Georgia struggled for a little while against Kent State. Tennessee played Alabama close.
Just a team you don't want to play. You do not want to play my flash. Georgia got caught there playing the big dogs from Kent. No, I'm kidding, obviously, but
hey,
I like that.
They were big dogs in that game.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
But like everybody has their weaknesses, and it's not for there isn't necessarily, I think, one overly dominant team like there has been in many years. And so I think this first ranking show is, in my opinion, can be pretty indicative of how this committee is going to value the rest of these rankings as the weeks kind of go, and seeing, okay, do you need style points? Do you need to win by double digits, or do you just need to beat the teams in front of you?
No, yeah. Oh, well, there may be certain teams that need style points right now. Ohio State would not be one of them. But if you're USC right now and you're trying to sneak in, Oregon trying to knock that door down, you might need style points. Clemson, undefeated Clemson. I want to see how this committee looks at Clemson tonight. That's really the big question for me, how they value Clemson. Undefeated Clemson, could they possibly be left out somehow?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think so, but I want to see how they value Clemson tonight. That's really the only interest to me in this whole show, is what they think of Clemson.
Yeah, Clemson, it reminds me some of TCU in 2014 when Ohio State gets the nod, even though TCU, there was a lot of speculation about it,
Sure.
Clemson could very well fall into that same category if you have, a one-loss SEC champ, you have a close Ohio State-Michigan game even, you have some of those guys, in the Pac-12, maybe they can make a run, or a TCU even could play that
Yeah.
spoiler
Well,
for
the
Clemson.
the key to me, not tonight. Tonight, I just want to see what they think of Clemson. Going forward, the key is whoever wins the Tennessee-Georgia game
Mm-hmm.
this weekend moves on. The loser, I think, is out. And then let's say Georgia wins, let's say Tennessee wins. It doesn't matter. One of them is going to win. If Alabama beats that winner in a very close game, they're going to put two teams in from the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
And then somebody, and if Ohio State's undefeated or Michigan's undefeated, they're getting in. And then you fight for that fourth spot. And that's where style points can come into play,
Mm-hmm.
or just how this committee values you, how they look at you. So that's the interesting part. Is the SEC championship game is going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
If Alabama can beat the winner of the Georgia-Tennessee game, then those two teams are probably both getting in.
Yeah. And this is, for both of those teams too, this is probably the last. I mean, I was looking at the schedules earlier. Georgia doesn't really have a tough remaining schedule after Tennessee. No. Tennessee doesn't really have a tough remaining schedule. So you got to think this is whoever loses that game is going to finish the season, winning out. And so, yeah, you have that one drop there.
Well, another thing, too, is I think it's within the realm of possibility that LSU beats Bama this week. Night game in Baton Rouge, man, that is no fun. And that LSU team is really coming now. Brian Kelly can coach, despite what anyone thinks of him as a person or whatever. Put all that aside, that guy can coach. And he now has dudes on his side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he doesn't have like the true, future doctors and future lawyers trying to make them football players. He's got dudes. He got NFL guys now. So that's going to be interesting this Saturday. And if LSU should beat Bama, that throws this whole thing totally upside down. And then you're only getting one SEC team.
Yeah, I was looking at some of like the outside chances, so the teams that aren't going to be in the top four tonight. And Ole Miss was one that I looked at, and
sure.
I have to think that they're rooting for Alabama to beat LSU, so that they're in a tiebreaker again, and then they beat Alabama, and all of a sudden they're in as the West champion against Georgia, Tennessee, whoever wins that game.
Georgia. Yeah.
So
interesting. Just like I said, I almost hate seeing the ranking show done now because it's just so worthless. I mean, things really get good from about this point on is when things are going to really get good. And anything that's happened up to now, I mean, how many really impressive wins are out there on people's resumes? Tennessee? Okay. Who else? Who else can bring a win to the table and say, look at this win here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see anyone.
There's not really.
But, I mean, after week 12, then you're going to be able to point to resumes and say, I beat this team. I beat this team. So I think tonight is worthless. I'm going to watch it. You're going to watch it.
Of course.
Everybody else is going to watch it, but it's worthless. The first college football playoff ranking they ever did. Do you remember who was number one? The first night?
It was Ole Miss or Mississippi State, wasn't it?
Mississippi State, Dak Prescott, Dan Mullen, they were number one. Do you know where Ohio State? Well, Ohio State won the championship that year. Do you know where they were?
They were what, 14th, right?
14.
Yep.
Yeah. So this thing's worthless. It's a good TV show. And like I say, I'm sitting here saying it's worthless. And, I'm looking over my shoulder to see when it's time for the show.
Right.
I don't want to miss it. So
if you're on the committee, what does your top four look like, and who are like the first two you have out?
Yeah, they're not going to do it the way I would do it. So the way I think they're going to do it is I think they're going to have Tennessee 1 based on the win over Bama. I think they're going to have Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, and then, man, I would think Michigan's going to be the 4. Wouldn't be the way I would rank them. I ranked them on my article, my alive, dead, hanging. Wouldn't be the way I think that's how they're going to do it. I think they're going to have Michigan 4. Probably, I don't know, the 5 spot, TCU or Clemson, probably. What do they do with Bama? I mean, there's, we'll see. It's probably better to do this show tomorrow after they make their ranking. Then we can slice them apart.
I
But
imagine we'll be talking about the CFP rankings for many, many days to come.
yeah,
Anyways,
I think Tennessee will be one, and then after that, your guess is as good as mine.
yeah, I can't see them. I have it Tennessee 1, Georgia 2, OSU 3, Michigan 4, and then my kind of first two out I've got are Clemson and TCU. I think they're going to give the favor to the undefeated TCU over
Sure,
Alabama, at least right now, and
I
Alabama
do
has
too.
every ability over the course of this week and next week to jump them.
Oh yeah,
But I don't think you can discount what TCU has done, at least in the first rankings, and you know we'll see what happens with them come the end of the year as well. But
yeah,
I think it'll be SEC, Big Ten, and then both two of those four teams are going to have a loss here in the next few weeks, so it'll all
yeah.
play
And
itself out.
well, the nice thing is both of those conferences are going to have losses that'll prevent one of those teams from
Yeah.
getting to the league championship game. So that basically Tennessee Georgia is basically an elimination game. I see no path that the SEC gets three teams in this, like
Oh
some people
no,
are
it's
so
zero.
scared about. Oh, they're,
Yeah.
they're going to put all the no, it's not going to happen. Elimination game.
Yeah.
I think the Ohio State Michigan game is an elimination game.
Yeah, it would.
So
I won't say
you're
never.
not going to have.
It would take pure chaos, like 2007 level chaos,
Yeah.
for something like that to happen and to
Yeah,
get three SEC
it
teams.
could. It could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, so we'll see. We'll see. That's why I hate these rankings, even though I'm going to watch every minute of it. They're so stupid right now. They mean nothing.
Yeah, one too that I thought about that is kind of an outside chance, and I imagine they'll be somewhere in the teens. Is Illinois?
Oh, absolutely.
They would have a win over Michigan if they win out, assuming they win out, and they would have a win over in Ohio State in the championship game then as well, and then one loss Illinois could sneak right in.
They're in.
Yeah.
No, they're in, unquestionably in. If they run the table, they will be in the college football playoffs without question.
Yeah, that would be a weird playoff scenario. I think I've never thought that we would see Illinois potentially making the playoff.
Last year they put those two Northern Lambs in. They put Michigan and Cincinnati in.
Yeah.
So Illinois would qualify as one of my Northern Lambs. So they would fit.
True.
Yeah.
Well, on to the Penn State game. Obviously, I was hoping Ohio State would walk away with it pretty handily early on for this ranking show as well, because you solidify a higher possibility that you get the number one spot with a huge win over Penn State. As it was closer than what my blood pressure probably would like, but like we talked about earlier, fourth quarter being able to really dig deep. And just the fortitude that this team showed to come back from that fourth quarter touchdown that Penn State had to take the lead, and after those field goals, I mean the just mental gaffes to kind of give them more and more opportunities, and then to be able to dig deeper into what you need to do and take care of business. And I want your kind of just immediate thoughts, what you kind of took away outside of that mental aspect of this team, and some of the strengths and areas that we need to improve on for a game like Michigan, or what we could expect from them.
Yeah, I'm not to go with negative first. They've got to run the ball better. They've got to, I don't know if it's play calling, which I think is a part of it. They can get kind of predictive, and they got to run the ball better. And we saw signs of that in the fourth quarter. I thought I saw some signs there of, that O-line starting to dominate, where they were kind of getting knocked back. And they dominated not for one play against Iowa. They got stoned. And then for three quarters, Penn State, I didn't think they played real well. The fourth quarter, I thought they were really good, started moving people. So they got to run the ball offensively. Defensively, I have tremendous concerns with coverage. I just don't think they're very good in coverage. And the Big Ten has no wide receivers and no quarterbacks like what you're going to face. And that's a concern, that the coverage has to get tightened up somewhere. And I think Hancock is a wild card for me, that I think they're starting to work him in more and more. And I think he's the guy that I want to see more of.
Yeah.
So, I just, I've never been a fan of the 3 safety look. I kind of like the Jeff Hafley 1 safety look with all those corners out there, but we'll see. I thought Tanner McAllister, I thought really he had a tough time in coverage the other day.
Yeah, he
we'll
did not have a good game.
No. And Lathan Ransom, I didn't think was all as good as he has been, but the corners, I think, really, and Denzel Burke did play better. Mm-hmm. Denzel Burke, I think, hit kind of a low water mark, but then I don't know if they talked to him or if he kind of found himself. Against Iowa, he was better against receivers that you and I could cover. And then last week, I thought he really played well last week.
Yeah.
So maybe he's turning the corner there.
Yeah, I saw a lot more of the DBs, looking back for the ball as well, which is one of the issues I remember earlier in the season was he led to a lot of pass interference calls, a lot of just poor positioning against
you get
those
grabby
players.
Sometimes when you're beat, you're going to get grabby and you get called. But so we'll see. Those are the 2 areas: run the ball, get the coverage tuned up a little bit more. And then, I don't see too much else that I would, nitpick of this team. And again, it was such a great win that I almost hate to say anything because they did what they had to do. And that's at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to find a way to win every single week, go 15-0, and then we can nitpick all we want, but they're going to have the big trophy.
Yeah. And it is good. I think we've won a lot of different ways too this season. We've won running away with it. We've won throwing 6 touchdowns. We've won with the running game, hitting on all cylinders. And, we've now won a game where we struggle in a lot of ways. And we're kind of matching back and forth between Penn State and Ohio State. And then you have to find some way to turn the tide. And, JT Tuimoloau was that tide. So he took over in the fourth quarter and it was amazing to see that. And just to see what Larry Johnson has kind of done with this defensive line. Obviously we know Larry Johnson is one of the greatest defensive line coaches of all time. I don't think that's disputed by anybody. But at what point do you kind of focus on, okay, JT is going to be out there every single series?
Yeah, it's interesting because Jack Sawyer is, an impact player, I think. I don't know that he's dominated, but I think he's proven himself worthy to be on the field. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's good. And JTT has stepped his play up. I mean, even if you take away, which you can't do, but if you take away his spectacular plays the other day, he still had a great game. If those plays never had occurred, he still had a great game.
Yeah.
I mean, then when you add in the turnovers that he caused, I mean, it's one of the greatest defensive games I've ever seen, and I'm not young by any means. So it was just amazing. So, and then Zach Harrison, I have to point out, I think has played his best football the last couple of weeks. So you've got those 3 guys, and they're all playing at a high level. So, can you keep all 3 of them on the field at once? I would find a way. I know I would.
Yeah.
So, the D line is getting better now. Penn State did run the ball on them the other day, had some success, but the sacks were up. So and then that's the difference between those Chase Young teams that averaged 3.8 sacks a game. One year, I think they were over 4. This team, I think prior to Penn State, was like 2.2 sacks a game or something. And that's a huge difference. Doesn't sound like much, but it's huge. So, let's stop the run a little better. Let's get the sacks up a tad. And we've seen that trend kind of happening. Penn State didn't have much success running the ball in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, Larry Johnson, I just have so much faith in him. He's a guy I trust, that his unit is going to be on point, all the time.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to picture his unit getting demolished, even though it happened against Michigan last year. So I guess I shouldn't say that, but I don't know. I just think it's a different team this year. And I think those guys are on point. I think they're better.
Yeah. That was a good point too. Last year versus this year, especially when you have a lot of the same personnel from last year to this year. The same staff largely, at least for that unit, versus you have now a coordinator that seems to have re-energized Larry Johnson in a lot of ways. And are they getting home the way that a Chase Young would? The way that, as you mentioned, the sack numbers that we've seen in previous years. No, but they're getting their hands up. They're batting down passes. They're intercepting passes. Obviously.
Yeah, well, I think they had 3 sacks the other day, and that's more of what they need to see. You need to be in that 3-4 range per game, and that gets you to be elite.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's transformed it in a year, and I credit not only just himself but also Jim Knowles to be able to just let him take care of business and let him run those guys the way that he needs to. And it's paying off dividends, and even more so on the recruiting trail. As I know, this was honestly it was a lot quieter than I thought it was going to be when he announced. But Kayden McDonald, 2023 defensive lineman out of Georgia, which is a feat in and of itself to take a player from the South like that. 6'3", 310, just big body. I looked up his statistics as a junior: 95 total tackles, 62 tackles for loss, and 20 sacks, and he scored a touchdown. So fitting that JT scores a touchdown as well, a few days before Kayden McDonald decides to commit to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But just wanted your kind of reactions on him as a player, how you think he will fit into Larry Johnson's mold, and what you kind of see him contributing either early on or in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I kind of thought he was going to go to Clemson, so I kind of got caught by surprise there. And a lot of the crystal ball picks for Ohio State didn't come out till a couple hours before he announced, when it must have leaked out. So nobody really knew what was going on there, and I sure didn't. That's for sure. But when I look at him, I look at what they'll want him to be is what Tyleik Williams is turning into right now. I see a lot of similarities between Tyleik coming out of high school and Kayden coming out of high school. And that's the player they're going to want him to be. That big monster, in the middle, takes up a lot of space, makes plays, to kind of go back to the Penn State game, I thought Tyleik Williams had a great game against Penn State. And that's what they're going to want Kayden McDonald to be in a couple of years. They're going to want him to be Tyleik Williams.
Yeah.
Big monster, space eater, disruptor in the middle, and that's, and I don't know. I think that's something they need. I think it was a good recruit. I think it was a good fit for them. Now you can focus on those defensive ends that you need.
Yep. That was going to be, it's a fantastic transition there, Bill. It's almost like you planned it. But looking then at how his commitment impacts those other defensive linemen that we're looking at, obviously Keon Keeley, Mateo Uiagalelei, and Damon Wilson. Yeah. And I know you've said a few times that you expect something kind of sooner rather than later from a Damon Wilson commitment potentially. So.
I do, but I don't know. I kind of thought he might be committed to Ohio State by now. Mm-hmm. And, I'm being told that Georgia's kind of lurking there a little bit. And so I still have my pick. I think Damon Wilson, will be at Ohio State. I really do. Keeley, I think, up in the air, but I think Bama's going to get him. Mm-hmm. But we'll see. I mean, these are not predictions with a permanent marker or even a pen. These are in pencil. And then Mateo, I think Ohio State is right there for Mateo. He's not going to decide till later, not going to announce till later. So, there's some ways to go there. But I mean, as Mateo watches the Ohio State Penn State game, I would think he would see similarities between himself and JTT. I think the comparison is legit there. So that can only help. And then, the commitment of McDonald is not going to affect these DNs, other than it might be positive for them to play alongside a monster like that. But it's not like he took a spot that a defensive end might have got. That's not the case at all.
Yep. Yeah, and if you're going to get two of them, you're going to take two of them. regardless of, of who else is in. So, or all three. You never know. Anything is possible.
You
So
would take all three. Absolutely, they would take all three. I don't expect that to happen. I think two is a realistic possibility, and but they would absolutely take all three if somehow that fell in their lap.
I mean, it has to be encouraging just to, as we've mentioned, what Larry Johnson has kind of done this offseason and this season so far with this unit and getting them playing at a level that, I don't know that anybody coming into this year really thought they would get to that quickly. Especially the younger players, like you mentioned at Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, and getting on the field really quickly and making very impactful plays. Tyleik Williams to that point too. And so like those guys have to be watching, and, it's definitely got to be part of their consideration as they get closer to a decision. And it bodes well in our favor for Larry Johnson to keep this unit playing the way that they are. And I only see them getting better. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Larry Johnson can point to the past and bring up Chase Young and the Bosa's, and he can point to a game that took place, a few days ago. So he can connect a lot of dots there between his history and his present that nobody's going to match that. Nobody can match what he's done. So he can go as far back as his Penn State days, Courtney Brown. I mean, he can, his resume is complete. His menu's full. So nobody can match that. And he's a great human being. He is, he's kind of, it's what Heartline is now. You're doing it on the field, and you're so darn good of a recruiter off the field. And when you can do both, that's how you get called the GOAT.
Yeah. If I could keep them, both of those coaches at Ohio State for the rest of time, I absolutely would. But the last topic here we have, obviously, we're looking ahead here at Northwestern. 38-point favorite, I think, is the last time I checked the spread. So it's the bottom feeders of the Big Ten, Northwestern, 1-7. They still haven't won a game in the United States since the only win was against Nebraska. I was looking up some of their statistics as well, offensively, defensively. They're in the bottom half of pretty much everything, and under 100 pretty much in every category: scoring offense, rushing offense, total offense, defense, everything. So it's not a very difficult, shouldn't be at least a very difficult matchup, and especially too, you have a sophomore quarterback in Brendan, what's his last name, Sullivan, who's going to be making his second, third start, I think, since Hinsky went down. So young guy, his defense is playing with their ears pinned back, and I think they're going to get after it. But only averaging about 18 points per game, giving up 28.8, and giving up around 400 yards per game. They've also given up the most turnovers out of anybody in the country. Curious your thoughts just on this Northwestern team, any matchups specifically that you think could be not necessarily troublesome, but something to watch. Their the running back Evan Hull is pretty electric.
Yeah, no doubt. When I look at Northwestern, I mean, this team is just they're just not very good, and that's kind of sad to me. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Northwestern, they had the lead, I believe, over Ohio State in late third quarter of the Big Ten championship game. That was in the COVID year. It wasn't that long ago. Yep. I mean, so this program has really dropped off. And, I have so much respect for Pat Fitzgerald. I just think he's tremendous. And I don't know what's happened there, but man, they have dropped.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just kind of sad. I mean, it's just a program that I've always admired, that because I think every college football program has a ceiling. Okay. And you shouldn't have the same expectation for Northwestern that you have for Ohio State or Michigan. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. They used to overachieve year after year after year. They would pull upsets over really good teams, and they were so darn competitive and so smart and so tough. And I don't know what's happened there now. I mean, it's kind of sad for me. It's a program I just have so much respect for because of Pat Fitzgerald, they are not going to challenge Ohio State at all this week. I mean, they're just the talent gap is just too great. I mean, there's not one player on that Northwestern team that Ohio State would want. And there's not one player on the Ohio State team that Northwestern wouldn't take right now and make a starter. So the talent gap is just too huge. I like Coach Fitz. I mean, but he has no chance this week. I mean, I think for Ohio State, it's a good time to let a lot of guys play.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that it's a road game for Ohio State, so you're not going to dress everybody. You're limited to who you can take there. So every guy Ohio State takes this week is a darn good player. So it's not like you can put walk-ons in or, put the freshmen in. No, everybody on the field this week for Ohio State is going to be a really good player. So you can't clear the bench because you don't travel with everybody. So this one could get ugly because you don't tell kids to take a knee. Yep. Okay, I don't care if it scores 48-3 in its fourth quarter. You're still playing. You can't ask backups to just not try. So I think this game is going to get really, really ugly. I would think Northwestern has not cut the grass since June in preparation for this game. I would think even if there's no rain in Chicago, that field will be drenched. So you got to use what you can use here. The grass will be high.
Yeah.
But I think it's just going to be a total blowout. And I think anybody for Ohio State that's questionable from an injury perspective, they have to sit.
Yep.
I mean, you don't risk anyone this week because there's nobody that you couldn't beat Northwestern with if they sit out. So
yeah, I was talking to TJ earlier in the week and just saying, like, you just got to get out of there healthy, at the very least, and it should be a relatively easy game to come away with the win and a convincing win. Mm-hmm. So you just got to make sure you're getting CJ out, you're getting Marvin Harrison out, you're getting everybody out of the game, as soon as it's decided, and getting sure that they're staying healthy. And you get the guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba to, I'm sure he wants to play. I know he does, but you got to convince him not to. He can't risk the tweaks and the little things that are going to just nag throughout the rest of the year. And I was actually looking up to your point earlier, this Northwestern team. I mean, Pat Fitzgerald, I think, does a really good job with what he has. I agree with that. And I was looking at some of the losses for Northwestern this year, and they've played 4 of their 7 losses have been by one possession. So they've played a lot of teams really close, and they actually played Penn State and Happy Valley to a 17-7 game, and that was much closer than I think people thought it would be. So it's a tough team. They're still gonna battle. It's not gonna be a necessarily a cakewalk, or you don't want to go into it thinking that. But I agree. I think at the end of the day, Ohio State's just got too much talent, too much speed, too much athleticism for this Northwestern team to hang around for too long.
Too much.
I do like Evan Hull, though. He's a solid player.
Real good player.
I didn't realize he actually leads their team in receptions as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. Second in yards receiving, first in receptions. So look for that. I think a lot. There's going to be a lot of, as much as I hated watching the bubble screen and the screens out of the backfield this past weekend, I'm sure there's going to be a lot coming out of Northwestern too. So the secondary is going to have to close, and they're going to have to tackle better than they did against Penn State as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Things to work on every week. You got to get better. And, but this week I would just, you get in there, you get out of there. Mm-hmm. You hope you get no injuries. I think Ryan Day definitely has a tendency to leave those starters in forever. Yeah. I mean, they were playing against Iowa. That game was long decided. You know what I mean? Once you get 40, Iowa can't score 40 in a month. So
Northwestern let him score 33, though. Don't forget that.
Yeah. He tends to leave him in there a little longer than I think he needs to. And this week, that could change this week.
Yeah. I hope so, because home stretch of the season in November, every week's going to be that much more important as you get up to the game. So that's going to do it for us, though, here today for the Morning Scoop. Bill, appreciate you, as always, joining today and all your insight. Always a pleasure talking to you, brother.
Thanks, man. I appreciate talking to you, Ryan. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Have a good one. Talk soon.
You too, buddy. Yep.
As always, thank you, Scoop Nation, for your continued support. If you like this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're looking for even more great Ohio State content, you need to head on over to BuckeyeScoop.com, become a member, and check out the Ask the Insiders board. You won't be disappointed. I'm your host, Ryan McClincy, and until tomorrow, go Bucks.